Well, good morning. It's a beautiful day in paradise for us here. Now you'll see that I'm wearing a t-shirt for all those pansies who've never seen a man go topless at the beach. I wonder what kind of a life you must lead. You complain about seeing a man. You know the men have teats, don't you? Okay, well, on with the business. I thought that I would show you just the kind of thing that if you are here as an expat, you will go through almost on a day-to-day basis. Little tiny things which will build up like a house of cards, and your good mood will rise or stay or fall on how you learn to handle it. And I always think of the metaphor that if you are talking to someone who is dealing with stress, which is what you can go through when you're here as an expat with a background of living in a well-organized, well-structured West. You will go through this when you come here because things are not well-structured and they are not well-organized, and all of those little tiny rules that you think are well, you didn't think were so important. You may even found them restrictive and offensive, but here you will revert to your roots and you will start unbelievably to miss them. And I'm talking about all of the conditioning that you go through that makes you require that things go in a certain way. This is as simple as, remember when, when Black & Decker were going, the original man of Black & Decker, the one who designed the work, what did they call it? A little work desk that was collapsible, and they marketed this for, I think it was Home Depot marketed it, or Black & Decker took it on as a whole thing. And Black & Decker were going through a whole thing of being not commercial grade. So they had a new guy at the top, and he said, from now on, we're going to up the quality and we're going to give an undisputed guarantee. If you don't like how something is performing and it's got Black & Decker written on it, bring it in, we'll exchange it. And they honored that guarantee, and as a result, Black & Decker became a respected manufacturer in the construction industry. Now, when you come here, the idea that you can just take something in and say, listen, I'm not happy with this, it doesn't seem to be the quality that you promised, and they're not going to exchange it. They will give you somebody to escort you to customer service. Customer service will examine under a microscope the receipt that you have, and you will go through painful standing there waiting, and it all takes time. And it's not the delightful people who are dealing with you, it's not their fault. They are required to do things in a certain order, and it's more than their job's worth. An expression from the old country, the job's worth, someone who in the old days would be a parking lot guy, and when you said, can I just leave this here for 1 minute, he was like, oh, sorry sir, more than my job's worth. Hence the expression. Well, anyway, I'm going to show you and walk you through one of the little hassles that I've had yesterday, which proved to be a full day's work and yet no production at all. I'll be back. Okay, well, this is actually it was to be a garage, but we had these windows, sliding windows put in, and it is actually eventually in Filipino time, which is a greatly different entity or condition than real time. So all of this is in waiting. Now, before, this was the quality like this. Oops, sorry, slid round there. All of my equipment was in this condition. Now I don't know how many of these. I've got 3 or 4 of these kind of drills. You can see that actually they're in quite good condition, but this is how I take care of things, and it's not the way, and you can interpret this as bashing Filipinos if you wish, but the workers are not used to dealing with equipment which is their own, because traditionally it seems they will come round and they will borrow the tools. So if you want to get the job done, you end up providing the tools. And because of that, my tools end up being loaned out, and then they come back and they've been brutalized. Like they'll take something like this, which was in perfect condition when I loaned it out, and it comes back and it's clearly not being taken care of. So I haven't been on the tools ever since we came here, but I've loaned out plenty of tools, and this is how it comes back. Now, this was all stored in our materials storage place, and all of my equipment was out there, and it was returned to me. Now, they mustn't have used this much. Well, they have. You can see it's been left out and gone rusty. And this is the way that it comes back. And there's nothing that you can do about that. Now, you can see this is quite a nice drill. And all that we had, the battery charger that was made for that, and we don't. We have other battery chargers, we have other batteries, and this is kind of the way that it goes. So things will become mismatched unless, of course, you can keep them to yourself. Now, you would say, well, why don't you just lock the door and don't let anybody in? Well, Beth has a key, and I haven't been able to get that from her for some time, and so other people will come in. Someone will come and say, we need this or we need that, and she will say, oh, I think there's one in the workshop. Big mistake that this is what happens. You can see here, look, sort of slipped round again, and where is the battery? Who knows? And where would be the battery charger? So these things just get lost. Beth, without my agreement, let somebody else, I think it was Lovely, carry this in, and it was open when she took it. And instead of closing it so that all of these pieces are kept in, she just took it like that, and everything went everywhere. As you can see, look, all the little drill bits and everything, and it will take time. Just infuriates you while you're doing it. See, so if you think about it, as I was explaining, my favourite metaphor is that if you're going through stress and you say, well, it's okay, I've learned to handle that. So the first little item of stress comes in, and it's like juggling one ball. Okay, well, you juggle one ball. I can do this. I can handle this stress. So there you are. You're now handling that stress, so you're juggling one ball. And then something else comes in, which is also an ever-present stress that you haven't realized, and now you're juggling two balls. And you say, well, I can do this, and I'm becoming even more skillful at it. Then add another ball, and another ball, and another ball, and soon enough, you will reach a point where you drop one of the balls and then all of the rest. So your ability to handle stress is taken to the max, and then you will get angry. There's a friend of mine who is also here, an expat, married to a lovely girl, even has a baby, lucky man, and he has said, well, you know what it's like. You just keep building and building and building the stress, and then you have an explosion, and then you have a reset. Filipinos don't see how this is to be, but it is. Now, on to our little thing yesterday. The drill that I have, the one similar to this, was a brand new drill that I got from Alturas. And because I didn't actually need it for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, it was turned on. So they press the trigger to test it, which is what they do with all electrical things when you buy them from Alturas, the hardware store there. Very, very good, charming, helpful people who are there to do the sales for you. I love them. They are perfectly polite and helpful. Go to the ends of the earth to keep you happy, but they're governed by the limits set by the owners of Alturas. So I go in, I buy a drill, I go in, and they hold up the drill and they press it, and round it goes, round and round, and now they say, there you are, sir, it works perfectly, it's a brand new drill, what else would it do? Then you get it home, and like me, I didn't even touch it for another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it may have been 4, or it may have been 5 months, 5 months on Filipino time. And when I actually tried to make it drill a hole, the hammer will not work. So instead of a hammer drill for going through a concrete wall, which we have here, all of these walls have something like an inch or more mortar, pure cement, is used to plaster this. As you can see here, look, this is not plaster, it's not the browning that they put on walls in the UK, say, when they've done a wall like this. This first coat would be what's called browning, and that would be, you know, something like an inch or a little more, but it's still not hard to drill into. This is hard. So I need to put up a curtain rail. Well, I got several to put up, and because the hammer facility on the drill, let me see if I can, where would be the hammer? It doesn't show us hammer on this. But there's a point at which it actually goes on to a hammer, and it bang, 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 like that. So it goes through the concrete. Now, find out that it doesn't work. So I bought a brand new drill, and the hammer part of it doesn't work. What can I do? I can't take it back because it's only on an electrical thing, you have to be able to go in, show the receipt, and to be able to show that you only bought it 5 or 6 minutes ago. Otherwise, they're very doubtful. Well, that didn't work. I couldn't find a way to make it work, so I went back to my old electric drill with a cord. Okay, and I look at it. Now, what was the reason that didn't get taken along with a lot of my other tools by passing people? I had no idea. I wondered, why didn't they take this good old drill? Well, I found out later. And here's the answer. Here's the chuck on my drill. Somehow, I don't know how they do it, but somehow they've made it so that it's broken. How do you break a chuck? You can see how it's just like a solid piece of metal with 2 or 3 parts that move. Anyway, it won't work. It won't. Those little jaws that you can see there, they'll no longer clamp. So I went in and I bought a new chuck. I bought a chuck, but the spindle that it goes onto is smaller than the one that I bought. I assumed, of course, it was universal, but my old drill was 10 years old or 12 years old that I bought when I came here, And so I went back. I went back and I found that the receipt that I had found in the paper bag that had been thrown away, it turned out that the ink was so faded I mistook it for being the appropriate drill for the nice new chuck, which was too big. And when we got to customer service, they took out a magnifying glass and they found it was the wrong receipt, so they couldn't. Anyway, bottom line is, I just said, forget it, I'll just buy a new one. But they didn't have this. They don't have that diameter. So I go around and I go to several places and they say, yes, we have one. And they show me the one that I've already bought, which is too big. And this is the problem, is that all of that and all of finding these converters, because the connectors that I have, in this case, it's the correct square pin plug, but on the ones that I have, on the drill that I have, is a round pin. So I have to go into town again, which is 20 kilometers away, and I buy a handful of these. And here's the difference. In the Philippines, everything has to be that much cheaper because people simply cannot afford to buy them if they are expensive. So, these are offered and they fit. See, this one in particular is a 3-pin, and most of the connectors that we have on our outlets, as you can see, are 2-pin. And this is a workshop, and because I didn't keep an eye on what was happening, they're all 2-pin. So now I have to have a connector which will go from 2-pin to 3-pin, and then from 3-pin to something else, and so it goes on. Instead of being able to go in and say, this is what I need, and they go to the shelf and they pick it off. This is what would happen if you were at Home Depot or Wickes or whatever the appropriate name is for the country that you're in the West, that is. So it's not that easy, and you get frustrated because you say, well, surely you should, if you've got one, you should have the other. And the reasoning does not follow. And it's very, very hard. If you've been like me and lazy and not taken the time to learn the language, then it's your own fault in a way, because if you were able to speak the language, you'd be able to tell people exactly what you want. So now, imagine trying to go in, and this is a whole set for drilling, holes for doing doors and other things. Imagine going in and trying to explain what you want there. Very, very difficult. This one is easy. Now, when I bought the wrong size, why was it my mistake? It was my mistake because I should have taken this with me and said, I need a new one of these. And just by showing it, no matter how inadequate the English is of the people serving you, they would be able to take you to the shelf and get the appropriate one, even if it's too big. See, so that didn't work, and I count it as my fault because I'm the foreigner and this is another country. It's very difficult to get this over to someone who doesn't live here and has never lived here. See, there's another one there, look. That's to a battery charger, and they are round pin. So these mix-ups are, that's it. So we're back to why is it that things are so cheap here? They're cheap because they're made in China and they're made to a price rather than a standard of quality. Now this one, yes, you can plug that in and you can then put in this one, say. So you could put that in there and it would work. But as soon as you pull on that slightly to do the work that you're trying to do, because it's made to a lower standard, the plug will just pull out. So then you start taping these together so that they don't pull out. And let's count that as the first ball that you're going to juggle. And then you come along and you find all of these battery chargers and batteries. Here's a couple of batteries. And they're not universal. They're not universal because the company that makes these things doesn't want them to be universal. They want you to stay with their product. See, look at that battery. That battery is one that would take a charger like this. So this is all very boring stuff, but let me explain how else you would be required to juggle some more balls. Now we're looking at putting a kitchen into the big house or the resort, which will be a small kitchen for people to come out and make a snack. And at the moment there's a spare corner, just like this. This is what's known as a corner. So you work out, as I did, I measured from this wall out to here, and we said we'll go out to 7 feet. So the corner that we take, the measurement we take, 7 feet this way, and going from here to here, we come out 8 feet. Okay, so now I tell Beth, we go to City Hardware, which is run on American, well, let's say Western standards. I go and I say, all we need to do is go to the sales rep who handles kitchens, and we will tell him a 7 foot by 8 foot corner, and this is what we want. And he will go to the computer, and because all of the cabinets that are made to a standard width. So you've got a cabinet which is normally about 18 inches. I can't think in centimeters. It doesn't make sense to me. So I always worked in inches. So you've got it, and it's like one cabinet would be 18 inches, and then multiples of that to get out to 8 feet. Now the man is doing this all day long when he sells kitchen cabinets. And he goes to the computer, the laptop, and he puts in 7 feet by 8 foot. And then he says, what kind of cabinets do you want on the 8 foot one? And you say, well, it would be nice to have a cabinet for drawers, and then a double cabinet, and whatever you need to fill in open shelves. And the same on this side, except here we have a double sink. So he goes in and he types in the requirement, and AI, which can write your life story in 3 seconds, gives him a design, and he says, this is what we need. We need 2 cabinets there and 4 cabinets here, and it will cost this much money. Simple. I tried to tell that to Beth. She said, well, I have to. So I've just got through telling her exactly what I've told you. Here's 8 feet and here's 7 feet. The man will compute on the computer what we need in terms of how many cabinets, and then we will buy those cabinets and it will work. Beth said, well, I've got to measure this. We're looking at this corner here. We're looking at the same corner in our living room, in our kitchen, and we don't have to measure for any cabinets. We just say, this corner is the same as any other corner in the entire universe. It's a corner. But Beth says, well, I know what it says here, but we need to go into the big house and measure the actual corner. So then I go through it. Beth, if you give that man the measurement, 7 feet here, and I'm speaking gently, and 8 feet there, he'll tell you how many cabinets we need to fill that gap. She said, okay, but first I have to go in and measure the actual corner in there so that I know how many cabinets. Now, I'm juggling about 7 or 8 balls. And you can understand what would happen when you're doing that. And this is the kind of problem that you have of communication, is that you are talking to someone, bearing in mind, I'm admitting, I confess to my critics that it is me that should speak the language and I don't. But that said, let's deal with what we have. I have a wife who, to all intents and purposes, looks like she is speaking fluent English. And then I mention a word like ordinary or complex. And I see a little flash come over the eyes. And I said, do you understand what that word means? And she said, yes. I said, what does it mean? And she says, I don't know. And you will be able to visualize then the complexity of having a conversation where you're looking at a corner. Now, I try to bring in the big guns in making my point, and I tell her, Beth, when I was in the UK, in my life, I was a carpenter, and one of the things that I specialized in was kitchens. So I know exactly what we need. Okay, yes, I know that. Well, let's just go to the other house and measure that corner so that we know how many cabinets we need, okay? And I say, yes, dear, let's do that. So that's enough, and I know that it will seem like all I've done is bitch, but it is a problem which, if you come here, even after you get used to looking at that lovely face on that sweetest of sweet girls that you marry, you will have to deal with this. Don't forget to like, comment and share this video if you think that there's someone who is standing on the cusp of coming out here after he's sold his home and his car and everything. It might be a word to the wise, not as a discouragement, because it's all still worth it. As I walk out and I look, and I'm looking at everything that I have. And yes, for me, it's still worth it. But you need to understand that there are aspects of living here which you will have to deal with. Bye for now.